Hello, I am Amanda Hunter and I am a teacher for Excelsior Classes. I'm also a pharmacist. I have my doctorate in pharmacy, and I thought I would talk to you a little bit today about ADHD. My oldest daughter has struggled with ADHD-like symptoms, and I'm also a homeschool mom. And so I just wanted to share some things, just a little bit about the basics of ADHD, how your doctor might want to treat it, and some things that we have done at home that have really helped my daughter. Okay, and I've seen it help other moms or other children as well. Okay, so just by way of definition or diagnosis, the ADHD is a persistent pattern of inattention and or hyperactivity. So this isn't like, oh, your 7-year-old just had a birthday party and they're so excited and they can hardly sit still because they're just so excited. That's not ADHD, right? It's a persistent pattern. And it's not just that 5-year-old who has trouble sitting still because they're 5 years old and they want to move, right? They don't want to sit in a chair for 4 hours, 5 hours, right? So they need to take frequent breaks. But these are some of the criteria, right? So it's something that is happening a lot. They can maybe leave their seat in situations where staying seated is normal or is expected. They're often unable to play or take part in a leisurely activity quietly, right? Because it's not just little kids who develop ADHD. Sometimes it's teenagers, sometimes adults can have ADHD, right? They often talk excessively. They're often on the go, like they're driven by a motor, maybe has trouble waiting for their turn. And so it's not just one of these, it's kind of like all of them. You notice kind of all of them or several of them, okay? And we have several symptoms present in 2 or more different settings. So not just at home or not just at school if your child is in public school, but in other settings as well. Okay, that's how we would diagnose. Now, if you go to the doctor, these are the treatment options. There are behavioral training, parent training, counseling, and medication. Now, a lot of times, if you go to the doctor, they're just going to be like, oh, let's put them on medicine, right? Then get a second opinion because that is not the first line treatment. First, we want to try behavior training and parent training to give the parents tools to know how to help manage their children's ADHD so they can give their children tools, especially if your child is younger, like a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old. And then if those things don't work, then we can pair those with medications, okay? Because as you know, medications have side effects, right? So we kind of want to look at a risk versus benefit. Okay, so first line or like the first option, kind of like the gold standard option for medications would be the stimulants, things like Concerta, Ritalin, Adderall, etc. And then if those don't work or if those aren't being effective enough, then they go to non-stimulants, which are like these here that I have on the slide. Now you might think a stimulant, why would I give my child who's already hyperactive a stimulant, right? Well, we're not really sure exactly the mechanism of action of how stimulants work or how the ADHD medications work, period, even the non-stimulants, but it's believed to be that they all increase neurotransmitters. All right. So this is a picture of a neuron. And so what happens, like if someone taps you on the shoulder, right, is that impulse, it's going to go here and it's going to travel down the neuron to the next one. Okay. So that impulse can go from the person who tapped you on the shoulder to your brain. So your brain recognizes that, hey, someone's tapping me on the shoulder and trying to get my attention. Okay. But in order to jump from here to the next neuron, right? If I drew another little neuron here, right? Drew another little neuron. And then here, this is a terrible picture of a neuron, but you get the idea. Okay. To jump to the next neuron, we need those neurotransmitters. So the neurotransmitters help the impulse to travel to your brain, okay? And so that's one of the ways that they think that the stimulants and the non-stimulants both work, okay? So this increased in brain levels of dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter, is associated with motivation, attention, and movement. But as with all medications, they have side effects, right? And so we want to say the risk versus benefit. So stimulants are controlled substances. Now, and a lot of times it causes stomach pain or loss of appetite. I know a lot of kids who are on things like Adderall and Concerta and stuff have a hard time eating. They don't want to eat, like maybe they take their ADHD medication first thing in the morning and then they're just not hungry. It kind of makes them feel nauseated. And so they don't want to eat until like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. All right. And then it has some other side effects that it can cause, right? And there is an FDA warning about mood swings and symptoms of psychosis when it comes to stimulants. And so like when it says symptoms of psychosis, that would be things like hearing things and paranoia. The non-stimulants, they have their own set of side effects, right? So again, with the decreased appetite, et cetera, et cetera. So, just we want to try to do the behavioral therapy and a few other strategies that I'm going to give you here in a minute before maybe we go and try the medications, right? And of course, you would want to talk about all of this with your doctor, but if I would really encourage you to get a second opinion if your doctor is just straight out of the gate says, oh, we just need to put them on medicine. And they'll say, well, like, what else can we try first, right? And see if they're willing to hear you. And if they're not willing to hear you, then maybe find a second opinion, okay? So some behavioral ideas. Set clear expectations. So here's my 5 things you didn't know about ADHD. So number 1, so behavioral ideas. So set some clear expectations, okay? Create a routine. Help your child become organized, right? Especially if they're a teenager and they have all these, they have to do Mrs. Hunter's integrated chemistry and physics assignment, but they also need to do their algebra and they also need to do their writing assignment, and then help them make a schedule, help them become organized, limit choices and limit distractions, right? If they're on their computer all day, right? And they're constantly getting emails that pop up. That's distracting to them. And especially for someone who's struggling with ADHD, then that they see that email and they want to check it. And then they were thinking about that and not thinking about their math or whatever. Okay. Or if they have little siblings running around, just say, oh, maybe the student can go in a room that's more quiet, especially for someone that struggles with ADHD. That's really important. And then you can use goals and rewards. Okay. Now there are some dietary considerations, and these are things that helped my daughter the most. All right. Food dyes. And I'm talking about artificial food dyes, not like beet juice that may color, something natural that you are consuming. But we're looking for things like Red 40, Blue Lake 1, I think it's called, right? So we can find them. You might think, well, yeah, I know food dyes are in things like icing on a birthday cake or M&Ms, but did you also know that many brands of pickles have food dye in them, and barbecue sauce, and some brands of salad dressings? Now you can find barbecue sauce and salad dressings and all of these things actually without, well, I don't know about Pop-Tarts because we don't do Pop-Tarts, but without dyes in them. You just have to read the labels, okay? And I don't work for Aldi or anything, but Aldi brand products do not contain food dye. That is part of what they do. So, but just read the label and look out for things like Red 40, et cetera, et cetera. And even things like a strawberry milkshake at McDonald's has Red 40 in it. It's not just from the strawberries. They put it in there so it'll be nice and red. Okay. We also want to make sure that our kids are getting enough protein. All right. And so especially at breakfast. I know in America, a lot of times when we think of breakfast, we think of sugary things like cereal bars and sugary cereals and white bread toast and donuts and bagels and all those types of things. We want to make sure we're having some protein and a protein-rich breakfast, right? So things like eggs, or if you can't do eggs, you could do some organic non-GMO tofu. You could do nut butters, right? We do a lot of nut butters at my house if you're not allergic. Of course, there's meats. Other thing is you don't have to have breakfast type food for breakfast, right? If your child's like not a fan of any of those types of protein, then by all means, if they like, I don't know, tuna, okay, then let them have tuna at breakfast. It's okay, right? We don't have to have typical breakfast food at breakfast, okay? Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is the brain is made up of about 60% what? Fat. All right. And that myelin sheath, part of the neuron, that is also covered with fat. So you guys have heard of omega-3 fatty acids. Those are also really important for brain health and for ADHD. Okay, this is something else that has really helped my daughter. So what are things that are rich in omega-3? Some fatty fish like salmon, okay? Or if your child likes to have tuna for breakfast, right? Flax meal, and you would want to do the flax meal, not flax seed, okay? If you just do flax seed, it kind of just goes right through you and you don't get the omega-3 benefits. Chia seeds, those do not have to be ground, and you can actually substitute eggs, like in your baking, you can add some flax meal or a chia seed instead of eggs. And if you want to know the ratio for how to do that, just send me an email, which I'll have at the end here, and I'd be happy to share that with you. Walnuts, olive oil, etc., or a high quality supplement like an omega-3 supplement, which you can talk to the doctor about, right? Obviously, before you just go out and get one. Movement. This is another huge thing, okay? Honestly, not just for ADHD, but for all kids, but especially for ADHD. Kids and adults, teenagers, even 30 minutes a day can make a difference, okay? And it doesn't have to be a team sport. Just to find something they like. Maybe they like to go outside and play tag, right? Maybe they like to go for bike rides. Go for a bike ride, be good for you too, right? And then even like sitting on a balance ball when they are doing their schoolwork or having little things in their hands to fidget with while they're listening to something. Now that doesn't work for all kids. So you have to figure out what works for your student. My daughter in particular does really well with holding something in her hand and to fidget with it while she's listening. She absorbs so much more that way. Now, my other daughter, she cannot do that because she's paying attention to what's in her hand and she is not paying attention to the speaker or whatever. Okay. So you have to figure out what works for your child, but it's something you could try. Okay. And see if that works for your student. And again, that may not even just be an ADHD student, and I hate to call them ADHD students, but you know what I mean. Somebody who struggles with ADHD, but just someone who's a kinesthetic learner, someone who learns best by doing or when they're moving, okay, might benefit from that as well. Some other things to think about is iron, okay? A lot of times, kids or people who struggle with ADHD are actually low in iron. And that's something that your doctor can check, okay? And then maybe they just would recommend that you or your child consume more iron-rich foods. Or maybe they would recommend a supplement. I wouldn't go out and just get a supplement because you can easily take too much iron in the form of a supplement. So I would definitely get that checked first before you just go out and try to take an iron supplement. But here are some examples of iron-rich foods. Other things, possibly zinc, magnesium, vitamin B, all right? And these are all things that your doctor can easily check for. So you can ask about those, okay? All right. So that is my 5 things you didn't know about ADHD. I hope you found it helpful. I'm happy to try to answer any questions if you want to send me an email. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.